This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we have a ton to get into today. What's the latest on Robert Saleh while the San Francisco 49ers search for a new defensive coordinator? And could the Niners be eyeing a massive trade trying to get Maxx Crosby to the Bay Area? Could that happen this year? Getting into all of that today. If you could, though, like, share, subscribe on the audio podcasting platforms. Give us that 5-star review, and let's dive into the latest about your and my San Francisco 49ers, starting off with what is happening with Robert Saleh. Now, there seems to kind of be this back and forth in regards to what is being heard and said about Saleh. As we know, as of today, the San Francisco 49ers are, and I quote here, all in. They are Robert Saleh or bust when it comes to their defensive coordinator search. They have talked to Deshae Townsend, although that doesn't seem like a scenario or path they want to take. They apparently are maybe going to interview Brandon Staley. That feels like the in-house fallback option, but they haven't talked to Dennis Allen. Lou Anarumo went to the Colts. Eberflus is still out there. Jeff Ulbrich went to the Falcons. It seems like the pickings are very slim, if you will, on the DC search for the San Francisco 49ers. And yesterday, we got what seemed to be a rather bleak report because Robert Saleh was announced to be in round 2 of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense or head coaching search, It seemed like, great, Saleh is going to be one of the finalists for that job. The interview is supposed to take place sometime this week, I believe this Friday. So the Niners and their fans are going to have to wait until probably the weekend to find out if he gets that job. It's his second interview thus far. He apparently did pretty well in the first one. So as of yesterday, we all were like, oh crap, this thing's over with. The Niners kind of burned their bridges. They didn't do a great job. They really kind of hamstrung themselves when it came to finding a new DC by interviewing just 2 people. They've only talked to 2 people, and if Saleh leaves for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're screwed when it comes to finding the next guy, again with Brandon Staley kind of feeling like that kind of fallback option in-house. But today brought some better news for the San Francisco 49ers and their fans because, again, we were talking about it was a botched process. They screwed themselves. This is a disaster. Then this morning on Twitter or X, Rick Stroud, a Tampa Bay Times reporter, put out there that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are preparing for their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, to be offered the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching job. Now, Rick Stroud is one of the best in the game when it comes to covering the Buccaneers. Well respected. A lot of validity coming from him in the words he says. He's respected again, and what he says usually becomes gospel out there in Florida. So that in itself was like, whoa. So if the Jaguars are preparing to give Cohen the job, that opens the door for Saleh's return back to San Francisco and kind of calms down the storm that has been the last, 24 hours or so when it comes to Robert Saleh. Maybe you're not returning to the Bay Area. Many of you already know how I feel about that. I'd rather have Dennis Allen. I'd rather have Eberflus. I would have even rather had Jeff Ulbrich. That said, Saleh is a great DC. There's a reason as to why they want to bring him back. Again, it's this unfinished business. You were great here. You're available again. We'll bring you back this coming season. There's obviously some drawbacks involved with re-signing or rehiring Saleh. He's probably going to leave in 2026 for a head coaching job, but I'm sure there is this idea of let's maximize 2025 and then go from there. Things can obviously change. You just never know what's going to happen. So we're kind of waiting and seeing, but as of right now, it is really good news for the San Francisco 49ers because, again, that Robert Saleh or bust kind of mindset was seemingly failing yesterday. But today, a much better, or at least brighter, silver lining, if you will, coming out of Florida, looking like Cohen will become the Jaguars' next head coach, leaving Saleh to then return to San Francisco in 2025. I still think the San Francisco 49ers, Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, I don't mind them having their first choice. That makes sense. We all have our first choices in many things in life. That said, the fact that they didn't interview anybody else other than Deshae Townsend, which, awesome, cool for him, how do you not learn? There's a reason they fired Nick Sorensen, or I guess demoted him, so fast. They said, look, there's so many great names out there. We want Saleh, that's our first choice, but how do you not do your due diligence and look at everybody else out there? There are plenty of teams that have their first choice for head coach, OC, DC, even special teams coordinator, yet they interview 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 candidates. Look at the Jets. Now, the Jets are the Jets. They're dysfunctional. They're a joke amongst the NFL landscape. However, they are looking at everybody to find a new head coach. Literally everybody to figure that thing out there in the Big Apple, where San Francisco talks to 2 people. Now, I'm not saying be the Jets. I'm just saying, how about 3 interviews? How about 4 interviews? You can't do anything else. It is literally this, nope, that's our guy. We're going to bank on him coming here. If he doesn't, we're going to be screwed, and then we'll have to pivot. But you're leaving yourself a little room to pivot. So, in a weird way, San Francisco, if Saleh doesn't become the guy in Jacksonville, which seems to be the case, have kind of avoided disaster, which is awesome. It's great. I'm happy for them and us as fans, but that's not really where you want to live. You don't want to live waiting on somebody else. Again, I said be proactive in their search. They weren't that whatsoever. Now, if they get their guy, great. Nobody cares, but it's a fact is, what if they don't get their guy? There's still a chance Saleh, whether it's the Raiders or the Dallas Cowboys, there's still other jobs he's interviewing for or has interviewed for that maybe they could say, hey, Saleh, come to Dallas, come to Las Vegas. The Niners, even though they want Saleh and could very well get Saleh, why would you not at least give yourself a little bit of protection while you wait for him to hopefully come back? What if he changes his mind during the interview process? What if he goes, wow, Dallas is giving me $10 million a year, I'm going there instead? Which could certainly happen knowing Jerry Jones. So I know we're waiting here and things are great as of now. Again, Saleh doesn't look like to be the head coach in Jacksonville when it's all said and done, but what if they get into Friday and that changes? I just don't like I've always been someone that has said, you want to attack things from all angles, right? You want to be over-prepared for almost anything in life. And if you're an NFL franchise, you want to be over-prepared coming into game day, coming into free agency, the draft process, and as you search for new coaches, whereas San Francisco really doesn't seem to be doing that. They really kind of fly by the seat of their pants at times, which it has worked a lot, but it's not really where you want to live as a franchise. But they're doing that, and it kind of seems like that's going to be the case as of this offseason as well. But if they get their guy, again, nobody cares. And it certainly looks like there is a clear path to Saleh returning to San Francisco with the news via Rick Stroud of Liam Cohen probably going to get the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching job. But I'm assuming that's not why you clicked on the video. You want to talk about what that thumbnail has to say, and that is Maxx Crosby to the San Francisco 49ers, and this kind of came out of nowhere. I am not one that believes the San Francisco 49ers are going to be in play for big-name free agents, and not really one buying into the fact they're going to trade for Myles Garrett or Tyreek Hill or make this big splash on the open market this year, but maybe that's changing. Maybe there's a way they can make this work. Now, the reason why the Maxx Crosby conversation has somewhat come back in to the, I guess you can say, realm of possibility is because I know during the year there were fans saying, oh, Lynch and Shanahan go out there and get Crosby. During the year, the Raiders weren't being very good. The Niners are kind of floating around at the trade deadline, but Crosby be a great addition to the team. That kind of got put by the wayside after San Francisco fell apart. It didn't make a move, but now we're in the offseason where so many things can happen. Things change their mind, where you have players and agents and GMs having to, getting to talk about the future of their clients and their players. And one Niner player, that being Deommodore Lenoir, took to Twitter or X and out of the blue just kind of advocated for the team to trade for Maxx Crosby. The tweet here says, Maxx Crosby would look crazy in a Niners jersey, fire emoji. Again, out of the blue, just didn't make any sense. It was like, oh, why? Like, that was weird. It made me wonder, like, did he say something on Twitter? Did Maxx Crosby hint towards leaving the Raiders, which has kind of been in the air for a while now? It just kind of was, oh, okay, Lenoir wants Crosby. That's interesting. Why? It is kind of the first sign of a Niners player recruiting somebody else from a different team, which I love that. I love the fact that Lenoir is showing the mentality of, like, I want to get some big dogs in here, and I want to win now. I want to win a championship, and he knows players like Maxx Crosby can help them do that. I always harken back to when LeBron James was a free agent, back when he left the Cavs the first time. Derrick Rose of the Bulls said, I'm not going to recruit players. Well, look what happens. He doesn't recruit LeBron James, which he may have signed or not, who knows. But then D-Wade recruits LeBron, Chris Bosh recruits LeBron James, Pat Riley goes out there and talks to LeBron, and you create this kind of mini dynasty in the Miami Heat. Now, take that same mentality to San Francisco. You got to be proactive when it comes to building your roster and having players like Lenoir, although again, kind of out of the blue, be like, hey, I want that guy on my team. Getting him in San Francisco would be incredible. It does kind of make you turn your head and say, oh, is that actually possible? Like, why is he saying this? Did he hear something? And would it actually work for San Francisco and the Raiders? So, if you have no idea, for whatever reason as to why, who Maxx Crosby is, a former 4th-round pick in 2019, same draft as Nick Bosa, he has 3 double-digit sack seasons. Since his rookie year in 2019, he ranks 6th in the NFL in sacks with 59.5. Now, keep in mind, Nick Bosa has 62.5, albeit he missed almost all of 2020, but a number 2 overall pick and a 4th-round pick are only separated by 3 total sacks, I believe. Like, they are 1 and 2. Like, they are one of the best. They would be one of the best duos in football when it comes to sacks. Since 2019, Maxx Crosby has 423 pressures on quarterbacks. He's forced 9 fumbles, and he arguably is one of the most dangerous edge rushers in the NFL. I know fans have been trying to pair, Bosa with the number 2 guy, whether it's Dee Ford or Drake Jackson or Leonard Floyd this year. There's always Chase Young last year. There's always been this search to find the other guy opposite Nick Bosa, which we saw in 2019, what that would look like if you can find the other guy. But undoubtedly, Maxx Crosby would be awesome to get in the Bay Area, or I guess back in the Bay Area. He was here for a little bit of time. When you talk about combining Bosa and Crosby's stats together, they'd have 122 combined sacks, 914 pressures, 20 forced fumbles, and Bosa has 2 interceptions himself. that would be like insane to have on the opposite sides. It'd be almost in a way kind of like Ahmed Brooks and Aldon Smith on steroids. It'd be one of the two or two of the best edge rushers in the game today on the same team. Like, you really can't compare it to anything else in football. There really hasn't been something like that in the NFL. Not even what Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith were doing with the Browns a couple years ago. That doesn't compare. Even with Smith and Preston Smith and in Green Bay a couple years back, that doesn't compare. There really isn't anything to point to and say, wow, like, this would almost be in a way like unprecedented in the NFL. And it'd be awesome to see. Maybe you can say it's kind of like Aaron Donald and Von Miller teaming up for 1 year with the Rams. But even then, Donald was playing inside at the time. So again, this is kind of those one-of-a-kind situations that you, fans, and the team and players only dream of. But would it actually work? Now, again, like I said earlier, there was connections between Crosby and San Francisco during the trade deadline. This is more of just rumors that have been kind of tossed out there of, hey, Crosby wants out. Could they make this thing work? And nothing came to fruition. I'm really not even sure if there was actually trade talks during that time. But in, 2.5 weeks of the offseason thus far, Maxx Crosby has been very vocal of like, look, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild in Las Vegas. I want to win championships. I want to be, vying for Super Bowls year by year, not fighting for 5 to 6 wins, hoping to get the young quarterback in the room. He wants to win now. He does not want to be a part of a new rebuild in Las Vegas. And he was talking to the Good Morning Football crew, I believe it was last week, maybe last Friday or so, before the MLK weekend. And they asked him, like, hey, Max, what do you make of your name being involved in trade rumors thus far in the offseason? And I quote here, I see all those things right now. I am focusing on my process, day-to-day, getting healthy. We are going to see what happens with the coaching situation. I've been with the Raiders for 6 years, and I am currently under contract. I talked about it before. I have no guaranteed money left. There are a lot of things that need to be discussed. We are going to do that. Now, Crosby did say he's happy in Las Vegas, but again, he wants to win Super Bowls, and if you're paying close attention, the Raiders are trying to find a new head coach. They fired their head coach, fired their GM. They're rebuilding there. Now, maybe they get the right guy in there. They wanted Ben Johnson. He said, no, I'm going to Chicago. You really don't know what's happening with the Raiders currently, and if they're going to rebuild this thing, I get they have Christian Wilkins there and they want to do their own stuff on defense, but if they believe in a rebuild and they truly believe that a quarterback in this draft is not right for them, I could easily see, even if it isn't to San Francisco, the Raiders trading away Maxx Crosby to hope to kind of spark that rebuild in place. Look, get a first-round pick, get a couple second-round picks, whatever it may be. You can really kind of spark that rebuild in Las Vegas by trading away Maxx Crosby. Now, will they do that? I have no idea, but is it realistic? Is it possible? Is it out there that the Niners could actually realistically acquire Maxx Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders? Technically, yes. I know the pushback would instantly be, look, Tom Brady's in Vegas now. They may want to keep things together. They just paid Christian Wilkins. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do so, but again, depending on what they and who they hire out there to take over things in Vegas, anything's possible. The San Francisco 49ers have plenty of cap space. They have roughly over $50 million in cap space. A lot of the stuff with Crosby really is, how can you fit that contract in your salary cap or under the salary cap books? So per over the cap, Crosby's under contract through 2026, and any team acquiring him would have to pay him $42.8 million over the next 2 years. In 2025, it's $23.1 million. In 2026, it's $19.7. But again, going back to what Crosby said, there's no guaranteed money. No guaranteed money on the books whatsoever, so you can swallow, if you're the Raiders, trading him away. And if you're San Francisco, you go, oh, there's no guaranteed money the next 2 years of his contract, and he has void years the next 3 seasons on his contract. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's going to be, guaranteed. All I'm saying is it is certainly possible the San Francisco 49ers financially could fit Maxx Crosby under the salary cap and extend him, erase those void years, give him more guaranteed money up front, and lower those cap hits year by year, pairing him with Nick Bosa in the process. Now, what would it cost? If they can fit him in the books financially, what would it cost to actually acquire Maxx Crosby and get him in the red and gold in 2025? Because again, they can make it work financially. They can get it done money-wise. But can they figure it out when it comes to compensation to actually acquire and trade for Maxx Crosby this offseason?
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
I'm going to assume that the first phone call, if they actually ever have one, would kind of be John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan saying, hey, what do you want for Crosby? I would like to think the Raiders, being the hard-nosed negotiators they tend to be at times and should be when it comes to trading away Maxx Crosby. And yes, I almost did say LA Raiders for a second there, fish and chips. I almost did. It was very close. I think they'd ask for pick number 11. Now, let me ask you this. If you are the San Francisco 49ers, knowing their needs, interior defensive linemen, offensive linemen, knowing who you may or may not be in position to draft this year, would you be willing to trade the number 11th overall pick for Maxx Crosby, who has 59.5 sacks, over 400 pressures, and 9 forced fumbles since 2019? Would you do that? Now, I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1, but I'm saying it would certainly be one of the best offers they can get for Maxx Crosby on the market. And I think about recent history. This Niners front office has been super aggressive when it comes to trying to improve their roster. It was a second-round pick for Dee Ford. It was a third-round pick for Trent Williams, a third-round pick for Chase Young. They even traded up to the number 3 overall pick for Trey Lance, and albeit that didn't work out, they were trading for an unproven young green behind the ears prospect they hoped could become something in their system. Maxx Crosby is the exact opposite of a green behind the ears young prospect you hope can become something. Maxx Crosby is a seasoned veteran player, already proven. You know what you're getting for the asking price. It is I wonder what he can be in a couple years. You know what you're getting this year and 2026 by acquiring Maxx Crosby. And even if it's only 2 years of excellent football play for the 11th overall pick, knowing this team's first-round draft history, it may actually be worth it to pull the trigger on a deal like this if the Raiders are okay and willing to play ball. I think you at least have to consider offering the 11th overall pick. Now, I know there's reasons to say no to that and reason to push back on that. I think that even at the 11th overall draft pick, like, Laurie Matthews says, getting a proven player, though, as opposed to an unproven player might be a good thing in the first round. You have Tyler here saying, at 11, we have to get an offensive tackle. I don't want to reach again. The draft is stacked with Kelvin Banks from Texas, Josh Simmons, Will Campbell at LSU. You never know. And that's what I'm asking here. I think that if you're the Raiders, you may want 11. But if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you say, hey, Trent Williams is 36 going on 37. The ankle's kind of, boom or bust at times. He's still great, but is getting older there. McKivitz is on the last year of his deal. You got to protect Brock Purdy if you're going to extend him. There's reasons to be hesitant to make a move, but I'll just say this. No matter who you take at 11, whether it is a top tackle, an edge rusher, even if somehow, just say in some awkward, weird world, you get Abdul Carter from Penn State, who I would love to get, and obviously maybe that's the one guy you wouldn't trade Crosby for. Outside of him, maybe. I'd be more willing to trade the 11th overall draft pick for Maxx Crosby than wait to see, what comes of a left tackle or maybe the third best edge rusher in the draft or the second best defensive tackle. That guy could be great. But then for every great guy, there's Javon Kinlaw. For every great tackle, there's Mike McGlinchey. For every great receiver, there's a Dante Pettis. Now, that said, I don't really think the market would dictate San Francisco giving up a first-round pick, which makes me, I guess you can say, more incentivized to call the Raiders. Now, the reason why I say the market doesn't really, show a first-round pick being what would be offered, because go back to last year. A very similar player in comparison to Maxx Crosby was on the market. Now, he wanted to get paid, and I'm talking about Brian Burns, former Panthers edge rusher, now New York Giants edge rusher. Brian Burns wanted the new contract with Carolina. He's a great player, and the Giants gave up a haul for him, but that haul did not include a first-round draft pick. In San Francisco, as of today, which maybe this changes because the projections may be on or off, depending on it, they have 10 to 11 draft picks, right? They also have 11th overall pick, the 43rd overall pick, I believe. They have a third-round pick, and they have 3 fourth-round draft picks this year. No fifth-round picks. I think they have 1 6th and 2 or 3 7ths this year. But the reason why I bring that up is because Brian Burns, last year, when the Panthers traded him away to the Giants, he only went for a second-round pick, a fifth-round pick, and a fifth-round pick swap. So even me saying that, 11th overall pick for Maxx Crosby, just kind of gauging the interest of potentially making a move like that, the reality is San Francisco probably wouldn't even have to make a trade involving the 11th overall pick. So you could get your proven edge rusher in Maxx Crosby and also get your star left tackle, your star interior defensive guy. You want to rebuild this defensive line. This is all, again, kind of thinking out of the box here, kind of getting crazy with it, but imagine Maxx Crosby and Mason Graham on the interior. Now, again, that's me kind of being crazy and go, okay, this is the best case scenario, but there's a way where that's possible. There's a way where you can make that work in your brain and say, wow, okay, or imagine Will Campbell and Maxx Crosby on your team in 2025. Now, again, that may be out of, it may not happen, but that could certainly be at least a 1% chance of happening this offseason. And I think with Brian Burns, okay, the Panthers got the number 39th overall pick, a fifth-round pick swap, and a fifth-round pick by themselves. How about I give you the 43rd overall pick, I'll give you a fourth-round pick, and I'll give you a fifth-round pick swap to the Raiders. That to me is boom, boom, boom. That to me makes the most sense. Obviously, the Raiders have to be willing to play ball here. And yes, fish and chips, I'm sharing my dreams again because I think the San Francisco 49ers have to be aggressive. They're a team that really can't sit back and wait. And yes, I firmly believe that this draft class means a ton to them. But even Maxx Crosby, he's only going to be in his late to mid-20s. He's a proven player. You can extend him and have him here for 5 more years. That's as long as you're going to have your draft picks in the second and fifth rounds or fourth rounds. You want to talk about rebuilding your defensive line. You want to talk about revitalizing your defense. Imagine this. Like we talked about earlier, if they get Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator. Then they get Maxx Crosby, pair him with Nick Bosa. Like, you're talking about, oh my God, this goes from one of the weaker Niners defensive lines to one of the best defensive lines they've had, at least on the edges, in a long time. It also gives you maneuverability with Leonard Floyd. You can cut him, you can trade him, you can keep him. You can figure things out along the way. Maybe you trade Yetur Gross-Matos. There's ways to make that work, to make this one of the best defensive lines we've seen in San Francisco with almost one fell swoop. Now, we have some questions here in the YouTube chat. I want to get to those in a second. But again, the Raiders have to play ball. But I think, and maybe there's a way you can word this where it makes you a little more scared, because San Francisco can fit Maxx Crosby under their salary cap with a maneuvering of his contract. It may also make them not able to re-sign Talanoa Hufanga, which I'm kind of okay with. It may also make them not be able to re-sign Dre Greenlaw, which I know would pause much of this conversation for many of you out there. Not myself entirely. I want to bring back Greenlaw, but I think that, on a one-year deal for $8 million, that makes the most sense to me. I think the incentive-heavy deal makes sense for 1 year for Greenlaw. He's not going to get a lot of money on the open market. But Nick Wise asks here in the YouTube chat, what would it take to get Crosby? Now, we don't know exactly, right? But I think the perfect trade to compare it to is Brian Burns of last year, right? 39th overall pick, a 5th round pick, and a 5th round pick swap going to the Panthers. Brian Burns going to the Giants. And don't forget, Brian Burns then got extended after the deal. So the Giants had to trade for him, then extend him. The Niners wouldn't have to do that. It's simply just, here's your draft picks. We have Maxx Crosby. You can extend that contract and figure that stuff out and kind of lower that cap hit. So I think that Brian Burns trade makes the most sense in regards to comparing what a Crosby, I guess you can say, deal would look like during the off season. Bobo says here, Greenlaw wants to go to the Commanders. I can certainly see that too. I haven't seen a concrete report. I think PFF said they were a good fit for him, or maybe it was Bleacher Report said they were a good fit for him. I don't think Greenlaw has said he wants to go anywhere just yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but it certainly makes sense to see that happen. Off Hamster Will says, so the front office will trade Maxx Crosby because a player suggests on media. Not exactly, right? If this was simply just Lenoir putting a tweet out and there being no smoke behind it, then whatever, this is weird. Okay, Lenoir's kind of throwing things out there, but it's Lenoir tweeting this paired with everything Crosby has been saying with the Las Vegas Raiders, right? It's everything he's talked about of not wanting to go through a rebuild, not wanting to sit around and wait any longer. He wants to win now. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a move the Raiders could make. The quarterback class really isn't that good. The free agent market for quarterbacks really isn't that good either. And I have a hard time believing that they make a move at quarterback that is Jaden Daniels-like this offseason. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that when you look at what Lenoir says and you pair it with what Crosby has also been saying, the door is at least certainly open for a trade of Maxx Crosby. Fish and Chips says here, does Maxx Crosby know he's being talked about? Yeah, he does. That's the thing. And Crosby isn't shutting this down either. He's furthering that conversation, kind of saying, hey, I'm open for anything. I'll talk to the Raiders. If they have a great plan in place, awesome, I'll stay. But if they don't, I don't mind leaving elsewhere. Tyler says here on the YouTube chat, exactly. Brian Burns trade proves the point. I likely won't take a first, another mid-round pick, or a top of a second. I think the Brian Burns trade is the exact comparison. It's not perfect for a 1v1 comparison, but it certainly makes, I guess, the best comparison for a trade of Maxx Crosby. Tyler, however, says he would trade the 43rd overall pick, I think that's what it is, that San Francisco has this year, and Deebo Samuel for Maxx Crosby. I don't think I'd trade Deebo for Maxx Crosby. I'd rather trade the unproven picks. This receiver class is really deep, so maybe there's a way you make that work. I get you want to have Pearsall, Ayuk, and Jennings and Cowman, and you feel more comfortable doing that. Maybe a vet comes in here and they can figure things out. I just think the way Shanahan calls things and wants to run the offense, Deebo means so much to that. And I think for as much grief as he got, which he deserved it this past year, he was really bad, made himself expendable for sure. I think the way he ended the year against the Lions and against the Dolphins made the Niners believe he can be that player again, but I still believe they are open to anything. But I think Deebo will likely stay. I'd rather trade unproven picks. 4th rounders, 5th rounders. I'll give you 3 draft picks. Give me Maxx Crosby any day. Niners media says here, Ronnie Bell to the Lions. Is that true? Well, that means they're going to lose about 2 more games next year because of him, so that's great for us. Ben Johnson gone, Aaron Glenn gone, Ronnie Bell's in town. Whew, it's a great day for the San Francisco 49ers if that's the case. Seeing if we have any more comments here on the YouTube chat. Hitstick Stepper says, I'm a Raiders fan. I'd trade Max for a 1st and 2nd and a 4th round pick. I get it, right? Every fan base kind of overvalues their own players. We did it here in San Francisco with Deebo and Ayuk, and almost every team does that. And I would not doubt in my mind the Raiders would say, give us a 1st, 2nd, and 4th round pick, but there really hasn't been a player that has gone for that in recent years. Like, Tyreek didn't go for that, right? Myles Garrett would probably go for that, but there's levels to Myles Garrett and Maxx Crosby. Garrett's like a 1A. Crosby's kind of the 1B. Really good player still. One of the best in football. But there's like that elite 2 or 3 guys at the top. It's like Crosby, TJ Watt. Then below them is kind of like Nick Bosa and Crosby and everybody else. Your Micah Parsons is certainly in there too. But that's a lot. and I don't think any team would do that deal. A 1st, 2nd, and 4th for Maxx Crosby. I don't think anybody would do that. Not a single person would do that. Tanner Jack says, you're not getting Maxx Crosby. Butts and nuts. Well, thank you, Tanner, so much for the comments. I can see you feeling that way for sure. Again, I really believe that the door is at least open for a move like that. Let's see what else is on here. Greenlaw wants to be a commander. Papa J asks, how would you grade Malik Mustafa's performance this year? I'd say a B+. There were certainly some coverage problems. I think a lot of his issues were playing too fast at times, but also being a rookie. Like, I left thinking defensive, for all first team, defensive second team. He was that good last year for me. I think a lot of the things you wanted to clean up are just rookie problems. He's really good in coverage. He isn't great, but he's really good in coverage. Certainly good enough to play on the back end consistently. He's a great tackler, great in run defense. I think, in a weird way, replaces Hufanga. Maybe isn't a playmaker like Hufanga is when it comes to getting takeovers, but neither was Hufanga this year. I think pairing Mustafa with a kind of free-roaming free safety would certainly help him. I don't think they'll do that, but even getting better play from Jair Brown would certainly help Mustafa, right? You'd be able to kind of pair those two guys together, but I love Mustafa was awesome. I love Mustafa. He was like my A+ pick of this past draft when I was evaluating the post-draft process with the Niners. He was an A+. It was like steal. I don't know how a team like the Packers didn't take him. I don't know how other teams did not, I guess you can say, covet him more as a 4th round pick. I wouldn't have been shocked if he went in the 3rd or 2nd round That's how much I liked him, but I'll take what we got in the 4th round. Don't forget, the Mustafa pick was what we traded away or got for Trey Lance. So that's a pretty good trade in my mind when it comes to Mustafa or Trey Lance. Let's see here. Bobo adds on to the Greenlaw conversation. The ex-49ers executives who work for the Commanders really want Greenlaw. I can see that. Bobby Wagner's played really well for them, albeit he's getting older. I can see them wanting to take like a 1-year or 2-year flyer on Greenlaw, hoping that in 2 years' time he's awesome. But if the Commanders somehow win the whole thing this year, which I don't think will happen, but it's certainly possible, maybe that changes. But Niners and Commanders, Niners and Jets, wherever there's ties, you can certainly connect 2 and 2 together when it comes to kind of taking each other's players away. Off the Hamster Wheel says that Robert Saleh wasn't that great until the team drafted Bosa and signed free agents. In the end, it's the players that matter. It's kind of hard to compare that 2019 team to the 2017 and 18 teams on defense because they didn't have the edge rushing talent. They were trying to figure out what to do with Armstead. And it all kind of clicked in 2019. Now, I'd agree with you there that players matter more than coaching majority of the time, but a really great coach can get the best of his players. There's a reason why Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart and K'Wan Williams and Kerry Hyder and many, many others, Kevin Givens and Arden Key and Charles Omenihu and many other players that have come here in San Francisco, either under Saleh or DeMeco Ryans, took that next leap. There's a reason why. There's a reason as to why you get Greenlaw in there. Like, this team had so many holes in 2017 and 18 to a point where you can't really hold those teams against Saleh. And I think we've seen, even for as bad as the Jets' offense has been, how much it's kind of dragged them down the past few years. While Saleh wasn't my first choice for DC, if he comes back to San Francisco, you'd have kind of every reason to believe and buy into the fact they can kind of restore the defense here with Shanahan and Saleh kind of leading the charge. But you get Bosa and Crosby, I mean, it takes on a whole new shape and form of what this defense can be in 2025. Fish and Chips says here, Debo was showcasing himself after the season was over. I mean, yeah. That's kind of how it works, right? But even then, I don't think Debo is showcasing himself for other teams. I think the Niners and Debo Samuel have a very awkward relationship where Shanahan loves him, but the team has kind of been open to moving him for like 2 years now. I think they realize that Father Time is knocking at the door for him, and they understand, like, this isn't going to last forever. That said, I still think they believe he can be a player. Like, he just brings something different to the table that Ayuk and Pearsall and even McCaffrey and Kittle don't bring at the receiver position. Now, I do think there are some names in the draft that can be that, Debo Samuel 2.0, but you're going to have to take those guys in the first and second round, which, I don't know about you, I'd rather have Maxx Crosby, Debo Samuel, and my first-round pick and say, let's go at it again in 2025, compared to maybe some young and unproven guys you like Savion Williams from TCU is certainly an option to be kind of that Debo Samuel, like, project guy, if you will. But I'd rather have Debo and Maxx Crosby or Debo and somebody else rather than hoping to find the next Debo. Now, it's only 1 year on his contract left. It's not going to crush you or kill you to keep him for one more year. I think that's kind of the case. Unless somebody offers like, hey, we'll give you pick 35 or 39 or, a second-round pick, I think then maybe it's open to it. But even then, you have to ask yourself, in the offense fully healthy, does Debo bring more to them than said pick? And I think it would. Now, obviously, it depends who's there at the certain pick, but you won't know until it happens. And even then, maybe you're targeting a guy, but somebody else takes him and you go, crap, that didn't go as we planned, which isn't really where you want to be. So I don't think Debo gets moved at all. Lori Matthews says here, when it comes to the Malik Mustafa conversation, if he and Bernardo Green take a step forward this year, I think losing Hufanga would hurt a lot less. I would agree. I know fans are tied to Hufanga and Greenlaw. I'm not as much tied to Hufanga as others are. I like him a lot, but he's played relatively poor the last 2 years or so. This year being very different because of the injuries, but Green looks incredible. Lenoir looks all pro level as he was this year. They got to find that third CB, but even then, if Green and Mustafa continue to grow, we're talking about 2 lockdown cornerbacks, a really good kind of Pro Bowl-esque level safety in Mustafa in the next year or two, I believe. And you can find the next guy next to Mustafa. You don't mind losing Hufanga. I think they still believe in Jair Brown. I think, a sophomore slump is okay to have. It stinks to have, but it's okay to have. And I think they hope and believe he'll take a next step in 2025, but he has to show that. I wouldn't be shocked to see them draft somebody or sign a veteran safety to kind of fill the room out. I don't know who that is, but I think they are 1,000% comfortable losing Hufanga this year, knowing he'll probably get a nice contract on the open market. The Rams make sense for him. The Chargers make sense for him. The Raiders make sense for him. There are a lot of teams out there that make a lot of sense for Hufanga, which could kind of price San Francisco out on the market for him. Are we still paying Devondre Campbell? Yes, I think there's 1 to 2 void years on his contract. So technically, yes. I don't know if they're going to be able to get back money from him. We haven't really heard the appeal results of that they were trying to kind of get after suspending him. But yes, they are going to have to pay Devondre Campbell for, I think, at least 1 more year via a void year on his contract. Let's see. Bobo says here, I believe in regards to the Maxx Crosby conversation we're having, every time we get a big name defender, they get hurt when they arrive, like Hargrave and C.D. Ford. Yes, I would agree with you. That's kind of been the unfortunate luck about this. Hargrave, tear his bicep this year or something like that. On the kind of a random week 2 or week 3 injury. D. Ford, a little different. D. Ford had pre-existing injuries where Maxx Crosby, Ford had lingering, consistent injury problems. Hargrave didn't have that. Crosby doesn't have that. Sometimes things just happen and you go, whatever. Take Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk had never been hurt before, then gets his knee destroyed against the Chiefs this year. So I think, while yes, that's been the case and may make you somewhat reluctant to make a move like this for Maxx Crosby, I think it's unfair to hold, and I'm not saying you are, Bobo, but I think it's unfair to hold other injuries of other players against Crosby that might make you say, I don't want to do that. I think it'd be a lot different for Maxx Crosby. Papa J asks here, is there a reason as to why the 49ers are still holding on to Elijah Mitchell? I think he's a free agent this year, so I don't know if that'll change. I know they, McCaffrey's under contract. Garendo is a rookie, or was one last year, I guess you could say. I think Mitchell's a free agent. I know that Mason is a restricted free agent, and they can match any offer that he gets. But I also wouldn't be shocked to see if Mason somehow gets a big deal that wouldn't fit under San Francisco's kind of, I guess you can say, plan for salary cap, or what they're estimating things to happen. I can see them bringing back Mitchell, letting Mason walk simply because of money. Now, Mitchell has been injured all the time. He's injury prone. I don't like using that word a lot, but he certainly is in that category of player. I'd rather draft a guy in the 5th round. There's a lot of good running backs in this draft. This running back class, of the positional groups this year, receiver is really good. Tackle has 2 or 3 guys you really love, then a bunch of guys you like. Center's not good, but running back is really good this year. Cornerback is pretty good. Edge rusher and defensive tackle are also pretty good. So we could be looking at another, like, McCaffrey, Grendo's the RB2, then a rookie running back behind them. And I'm sure they'll bring back Patrick Taylor Jr. or bring somebody else in to kind of fill the group out. I want to get your name right, and I feel bad if I don't. Is it Neo Shao family? I hope that's right. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. But they say, I'd rather trade for DK, I'm assuming Metcalf, if he's available. I don't want DK Metcalf at all. If that's who you're talking about, I think DK Metcalf is one of the biggest front runners in the NFL. I think that he's fake tough. He disappears in big games. He'll have one amazing game against the Cowboys, and they'll go, oh, wow, there's DK. And then he stinks against, like, the Packers and the Niners. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to be consistent, I don't want you. Like, in a weird way, I'd rather bet on Pearsall, Ayuk, and Debo than get DK. Now, I think San Francisco could sign a veteran free agent as a wide receiver this year and kind of round out the room as Ayuk comes back from injury. But you also have Juwan Jennings, who was incredible this year. I don't think receiver is necessarily a need if you're talking about DK Metcalf. I really don't think it's a need. If anything, when you look at, what the 49ers need this year, it is interior offensive line help. It is edge rushers, defensive tackle, and maybe a safety. Like, they have plenty of money to work with. They can really, I'm not going to say fill all their holes because you're drafting players and you just don't know who they could be. Yes, they have to have a kicker, two fish and chips, big time, really big time, and honestly, maybe a punt or two. I don't think that receiver makes sense. I think trading for Crosby, or if you're not trading for Crosby, it's at least the idea that you are trying to find the edge rusher to pair with Nick Bosa. Every year that goes by, these guys get older. Now, they're not old and decrepit by any means. They can still contend. We all watched the Lions lose in the first round or second round to the Commanders, right? We all watched, the Ravens lose against the Bills, and we all watched the playoffs this year, and the Vikings, for example. It was like, oh my God. These are the Packers, whoa. The Niners, even off a down year, the belief is still that they are a top dog in the NFC. Now, you got to prove that. You got to bounce back and stuff, but, they're in a really good spot to fill many of their holes. They can find the new center. They can find a left guard. You can find some depth at tackle, although I'd just bring back Jalen Moore if he'll come back. I think that the Niners are in a good spot. Now, again, that's why I'm talking about you can afford to take a big swing like Maxx Crosby. I know it sounds crazy, but we're talking about a second-round pick, maybe a fourth-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. I know Raiders fans will say, no, I don't want it. It's bad. It's Maxx Crosby. I totally get that. As Raider Brian says here, I totally understand that. You're going to want a first-round pick and a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick, but that isn't what players are going for like Maxx Crosby. Hence why the Brian Burns comparison earlier. And I think San Francisco, with the picks they have, 10 or 11 now, I'm confused on which one they got because there's been mixed reporting on that. But they have 10 or they have double-digit picks is how I'll word that. This year to work with, and trading 3 of those wouldn't hurt you at all. Yeah, they 8 picks still. You keep your first-round pick. You'd have your third-round pick still, and 2 fourth-round picks, if anything. So, there is a way to make this work with the financials It's a need for the Niners. It may be a need if Crosby says, I don't want to be in Las Vegas anymore because of a rebuild. Like, there is a way to make this work. And if you're the Raiders, you don't have to, but you certainly want to do good by one of your franchise players. And I think for Crosby, he may say, I want to go to one of these three teams. And I wouldn't be shocked to hear the Niners being on that list, especially when you add in the wide nine, Saleh kind of context behind what could make this move happen. Edge rushers love to read and react. Just go out there and play their game. Bosa loves that. Crosby would love that in San Francisco. And hopefully, at pick 11 or in free agency, like, imagine this, because it would actually work. And fish and chips, here comes my dream again. Nick Bosa, Malik Collins, DJ Jones, Maxx Crosby. That is like every Niners fan's wet dream right now of what could happen during the free agency slash kind of NFL draft period of time. And you know what? It may be a long shot, but you can make that work. You can really make that work. And I think if you did that, and obviously again, I'm kind of using my Larry Krueger of like, let's see how all these things work. And I love Larry so much. But like, you could actually make this work financially via trades, free agent market, and it gives you that number 11 picks to kind of hit that blue chip prospect you may like, which could be a cornerback, which could be a tackle. Like, it just makes it all come together, and certainly you'd kind of have to maneuver your cap in the right way. You'd have to kind of look ahead in years, but don't forget, you can extend Kittle, you can extend Warner. If you really want to, you can extend Debo, albeit I wouldn't do that. He'll be off the books in a year. Like, you can really make this work because you have so many contracts off the books in 2 years' time and 1 year's time. You can not bring back certain guys like Hufanga, like Greenlaw. It would give you more holes in return, but the Niners can certainly survive with Maxx Crosby, DJ Jones, Malik Collins, Nick Bosa, the 11th overall pick, and 7 more along the way. Like, this team has been so good at drafting in those late middle rounds, you don't mind moving a second-round pick away to do so. And so, you know, Lori, you're right. I may be setting myself up for disappointment. Now, I will say this, that do I think this trade happens? I don't. I really don't. All I'm saying is it certainly is a possibility to happen this year. Do I think San Francisco will do their due diligence and they'll call and they'll make, you never know. And honestly, like, one of the biggest, like, maybe kind of stopping points of this trade is Tom Brady, Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch. I don't know what their relationship may be, but, the Niners at least, from the optics, can make this deal work. But I'll say this, Lori, I'm hoping it'll happen in my dreams and in my visions of when I sleep and go, what does this offseason look like, when you come to make a perfect Niners roster? That said, I don't think it'll happen whatsoever, but I'm fingers crossed hoping it does happen this year. And I could probably think to you as well, you would love that to be the case in 2025. But I will not be disappointed. Not be disappointed at all. Just rather let down. Be like, oh, that stinks. But not expecting it to happen whatsoever. But Blutz Wave here, what a weird name. What also a great name. Blutz Wave says, please take him. Give us 2 firsts and a 3rd rounder. I'll tell you what, Blutz Wave, we'll take him, but not for that price. Not for that price. Go look at the Brian Burns compensation. 39th overall pick, a 5th round pick, and a 5th round pick swap. That is the deal that got Brian Burns to the New York Giants. I think something along those lines. You can argue maybe it's a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick and a 4th round pick swap. You don't mind doing that stuff. It's from Dragon Ball GT, the Giant Ape. First off, I love that. As a 90s kid, my brother had the Majin Buu VHS series all in a line where it makes the pictures. It was awesome. But I will give you this. my knowledge has waned over the years, but yes, that's awesome. Fish and Chips says here, I'll raise you this, Sterling. Ronnie Lott, Charles Haley, Deion Sanders, dream. Let's recreate that this year, man. You give me Crosby and Bosa and Fred Warner and DJ Jones and Lenoir and Mustafa, and you give me Bernardo Green and extended Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey's back healthy, and Ayuk comes back middle of the year healthy. Pearsall's awesome. Like, whoo, man, get the scratchers out because we're playing the lottery. May get some luck this year, but in all seriousness, I don't think this move happens. But I'm just saying it could possibly happen. Everything San Francisco has going for them can make the deal work financially, but could also give the Raiders what they want in regards to compensation. If that Brian Burns deal is what they're looking for, and even if it's a little bit more, I wouldn't mind doing that. You really could make that work this offseason. Papa J says here, which will end on this, I have to go pick up my wife from work. Is there a backup quarterback that's available you would rather have than our current backups, being Joshua Dobbs and Brandon Allen? I mean, Justin Fields was awesome this year. I really don't think he's leaving Pittsburgh. I don't know if they liked the way that Russ ended the season. I have an interesting feeling that Russ will end up playing for the Saints or the Raiders this offseason. I can see Brady wanting to bring that in. The Packers have Malik Willis, as Fish and Chips points out here. You'd have to trade for him, I think. I know there were some rumors that, or it was like predicted that they might cut him, but it's like a $1.5 million cap saving. Not really worth it, knowing he kind of saved their season early on when Jordan Love got hurt. So I think Fields makes sense, but I think his price tag will be too high. I don't really have my phone in front of me, but just names out there make sense. You look at, Joe Flacco's older, but maybe he makes some sense. Andy Dalton makes a lot of sense for me, if that's the case. Of course, you don't mind bringing back Joshua Dobbs, but Shanahan was like awkwardly in love with Brandon Allen throughout the year, which, okay, doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. I'm trying to kind of put my mind around the NFL landscape currently. Kenny Pickett's a no-go. Mitch Trubisky's a no-go. You're not getting Derek Carr. He's terrible. I'm trying to think who else will be out there on the market this year. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. Maybe, I don't know what Gardner Minshew's status is. Maybe I'm wrong. If he's a free agent, you don't mind doing that, but I think he's on a 2-year deal with the Raiders. I could be wrong there. Outside of that, nobody really comes to mind where I'm like, gotta get him. You also got Tanner Mordecai, who I know fans are like in love with. I don't share the same infatuation, but in a world where you're talking about, and of course, yes, Zach Wilson's out there, it'd be pretty funny. And I was thinking about this, that if Robert Saleh, like looking at his kind of like coaching carousel currently, so the Jaguars, he coached Zach Wilson with the Jets, number 2 overall pick. The team he may go to this year, the Niners, had Trey Lance, the 3rd overall pick. He's interviewing for the Jaguars job, which has Trevor Lawrence, the 1st overall pick, and the team he also interviewed for, the Cowboys, they currently have Trey Lance. So he's doing that whole 2019 coaching class carousel currently. There's also Mac Jones. Like, a lot of that 2019 class that have all been utter failures make some sense. Honestly, bring in Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and just say, hey, to figure this thing out, and whoever wins would be pretty fun to watch. I think the best one of that group, when you talk about like not falling off, would be Andy Dalton for me, but he's getting older. Maybe Shanahan wants some mobility in his room. I think Zach Wilson's turnovers make me mortified, but The physical traits are certainly there. You like Mac Jones, Kyle's dream quarterback. I don't know why he didn't take him, but I guess you can say thank God he didn't. Albeit Mac Jones is somewhat the most accomplished quarterback of that room or that class still. It's like Trevor and Mac Jones. Man, my goodness. But I don't know. I think I want a proven veteran behind Brock Purdy. I think that's my hope. Then Tanner Mordecai is also there. Niner Media says Cooper Rush if he doesn't ask for too much. I wonder if Dallas brings him back, though. I'm just not, like, there's a lot of, like, really small moves that the Niners could make to kind of raise their floor in case of disaster that I just don't know what other teams are doing. Hence why it's only January. That said, though, I want to thank all of you in the comments, all the viewers, all the listeners, all the watchers. Thank you so much for watching, listening, commenting. There's so many of you in here. Lori Matthews, Niner Media, Papa J, Fish and Chips, Blutz Wave, a Niner fan. Like, there's so many of you in here. Raider Brian, thank you all so much for liking, sharing, subscribing. If you can, this podcast comes out tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. You can leave a review on the audio podcast version. I would love that so much. If you want to, follow me down below on Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is 49ers_access. The Instagram is 49ers.access. And if you want to go to a sporting event, a concert this year, baseball's around the corner, the NBA's in full swing, you can use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Have a great rest of your day. It could be any day now, any second now. Robert Saleh returns to the San Francisco 49ers. We have a question here. Why am I writing Packers stuff? It's my job. I have to. I cover the Packers. I cover the Niners. Hope that's a good enough answer for you out there. But if you can, go to theheavy.com and check out my work. I'll put the link down below. Thank you all so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And as always, until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.